Hey, Care Partners, welcome back. We're always looking for great resources for our caregivers because being a caregiver for someone with brain change is one of the most difficult things I've ever come across. And we've done it again. And we've reached out to the community and found an amazing organization called Pro Seniors. And I have with me today their executive director. So let me tell you about Dimity Orlet. She has served as an executive director of Pro Seniors, a nonprofit that helps older Ohioans prevent and resolve legal and long-term care problems and fight Medicare fraud since March of 2019. As chief executive officer for Pro Seniors, Miss Orlet is a passionate aging advocate and is responsible for overall administration, fundraising, and operation. She serves as the face of the organization, nurturing strategic collaborations and partnerships. Ms. Orlet also leads the management team to ensure the effective provision of services and adherence to regulatory and grant requirements and budgets. Prior to our work at Pro Seniors, Ms. Orlet served as Assistant Counsel and Director of Continuing Legal Education for the Cincinnati Bar Association. That was for 18 years. During that time, she cultivated relationships with members, volunteers, and other partners and led the production of 100 plus continuing education programs each year through collaboration with practice group leaders and development of strategic partnerships. She also advised attorneys facing ethical quandaries, liaisoned with CBA's Ethics and Professional Responsibility Committee, and managed the committee's ethics hotline. So cool. Prior to that, and immediately following law school, Miss Orlet was a judicial law court for the Honorable J. Howard Sunderman Jr. at the Ohio First District Court of Appeals. Education in bar admissions, University of Cincinnati College of Law. That was in Cincinnati, 1997. She also attended Michigan State University in Lansing, got her bachelor's of philosophy, was magna cum laude in 1994, was a fellow Cincinnati Academy of Leadership for Lawyers in the class of 2006. She was with the XL Nonprofit Executive Leadership Development Program, class of 15, 20, 21, and 22. Admitted to practice law in Ohio and Southern District of Ohio community involvement. And then Hamilton County Elderly Services Program Advisory Council, and so many more organizations. Listen, there's so many. I'm going to have to list them in the show notes. But without further ado, I need you to help me welcome Dimity Orlet.
Hi there.
Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity.
That's the longest bio I've had. It's incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of great opportunities.
That is so amazing. A lot of great opportunities, and I'm sure you've worked with a lot of very interesting people, and your experience must be just tremendous. So it really has prepped you in such a great way for what you're doing now with Pro Seniors.
Yeah, I feel very lucky to be associated with Pro Seniors. I've been here since 2019, so a little over 5 years now. Still learning a lot every day because, my background was in law and I've been in nonprofit law. But this, the aging network, as you know, it's its own world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good because there's so many wonderful resources and different practitioners with different expertise. But for people who have not navigated that before and have the need to navigate it, it can be hard to get your bearings, So
I agree.
Yeah.
Very confusing. And it's not a standard from city to city to city.
No.
And that makes
And even in Ohio, like you're saying, from state to state it can vary, but from community to community. And there are some foundational principles that I think even like when I learned earlier on, like the Area Agency on Aging Network. When I started at Pro Seniors, people were talking about AAA. I thought they were talking about
I did too.
The car thing that, I have a membership in. And so, but again, that's something that, we don't, and we'll talk about it hopefully in a minute, just ageism generally. We don't value or think about aging, I think, in the way that would be healthy for us and bring in some of this information and knowledge earlier than when it's at a crisis standpoint. So even just understanding the systems and the resources and not pushing things out of the way because we assume everything's going to be bad news.
Absolutely. Always knowing your plan B is a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting, you bring up a good point that even when I'm counseling with a family, I need to not just know what city, but it's like what county,
Mm-hmm.
because that city could have 3 counties part of it. It's a great big city. So
Yes,
you got, and those, because their resources are going to be different and they can be very different.
that's right.
Oh, amazing. Well, let me get started with my questions for today. Okay. Pro seniors. This is going to be a new topic for many of my listeners. What's their mission? What's their vision?
Yeah. So, Pro Seniors, we're a nonprofit organization. We're actually getting ready next year to celebrate our 50th year of operation. We were established in 1975, which is awesome.
Congratulations.
And we've actually just started. We're getting ready to wrap up a strategic planning process. So we're tweaking a little bit how we state our mission to be a little bit more clear about the work we do. Because when you hear the word pro seniors, it could mean a lot of different things. And we're not, for example, providing in-home care. We're not, there's certain things we aren't doing, and we want to be a little bit more clear about that. So our mission is to help Ohioans prevent and resolve legal and long-term care problems, and also help people fight Medicare fraud.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. So what that, and I should say our previous mission statement was to help empower older adults to live with, independence and quality of life, to enhance that, which I think is clearly part of the ethos, but it really didn't help state, like, okay, so what do you do? So we have 3 pillars of service. We have a legal program, so effectively a legal aid, but focused on older adults, so those 60 and over, which we can, hopefully talk about a little bit, because it's an important resource that is a statewide resource.
Mm-hmm.
And again, to our point about, all the vagaries of knowing where someone lives, we're always working to get the word out about our legal helpline, because regardless of where you are in Ohio, it is something that people have access to. And, people of moderate to low income having access to a lawyer is often challenging, if not impossible.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so that is one of our pillars of service. We also host the Ombudsman program for our region. So again, we talked about area agency on aging regions, and that is something that's set out. There's a federal statute that's been in place for a long time, the Older Americans Act, that sets out resources and funding to support older adults, and the funding is distributed by state. So that funding goes to our Department on Aging, and then it is distributed by the, there's regions. So in Ohio, there are 12 regions, and each region has an area agency on aging that distributes funding for certain programs. So they will, for example, a lot of people are familiar with Meals on Wheels, so the home delivered meals. They contract with different entities, and they have funding to provide that. The area agency on aging really effectively acts as the front door for older adult services in that region. Mm-hmm. And so they have staff that when folks call with questions, they can help them navigate to the proper organization. They provide some case management and services themselves. But again, most people, they're just so instrumental in anyone that's confronting an issue regarding themselves aging or questions. They're always the first place to start, but you don't know that if you don't know they exist, right?
Right.
Yeah. So my point about that is, so one of the programs that it is also kind of performed by region is the Ombudsman program. There's also funding, through the state, the Department of Aging, Older Americans Act, that these ombudsmen are individuals that act as advocates for those living in long-term care. So that could be a nursing home, an assisted living, or even receiving home care services. And again, these are all no-cost services. And the idea is that if you're in that type of setting, oftentimes you may be have limited ability, due to health restrictions or otherwise, to seek out help when there are issues. So someone to help empower you to understand your rights, to speak up if there's a concern, and if you want the ombudsman's help, they will actually advocate on your behalf. So
That's
we have,
so wonderful, because I think a lot of people don't understand what an ombudsman is and what they do and how
Mhm.
useful they could be for you.
I didn't even know there was such a thing before I, well, started interviewing to come to Pro Seniors and researching. And
Right.
yeah, and frankly, also most people don't, or a lot of people don't plan ahead of time to be in a nursing home. Sometimes you have a fall, you're in the hospital, and then you're discharged, maybe even temporarily to a facility for
Mm,
rehabilitation. And so, I mean, all that's to say we don't do advanced planning and understand, like, okay, what is this going to look like? What can I expect? What are my rights? And again, then you're in a situation where you're not feeling well, and a lot of people, like more than 60% of people don't have regular support or visits from family or
right.
friends, and so they really are on their own, and it can be challenging. So
Yeah.
having that advocate there, and so we have a team of people that do that in our 5 county area. So that's Butler, Clinton, Claremont, Warren, and Hamilton counties. But no matter where you live in any state, there is an ombudsman program
That's
to
good.
cover your region. And so that's something that people can look up on the internet, or look up, area agency on aging in their county, and they'll connect you. So that's really good information. And they do some other services, if we have time, we'll talk about. And some of it's just helping people, maybe if they suspect they may need to move to, whether it's assisted living or otherwise. We will never make a specific recommendation, because that's, we're objective. We don't have a vested interest in what people choose, but we can help people understand what we think are important factors to consider based on our experience. And there are tools available, in terms of quality assessment tools for long-term care. So we can help guide people to make what they feel is the best decision for them. So that's one of the other, resources the ombudsman can provide. And with a resident's consent or an individual's consent, we could also, speak with someone else in their family. So other people can be brought in if the client consents to that.
Right.
And then,
Right.
yeah, and our third pillar of service is our Senior Medicare Patrol.
Mm,
Yeah, so that is a statewide program. There is a Senior Medicare Patrol in every state. It's a federally funded grant program. And the goal of that program is to help people recognize, like, what is Medicare fraud? What does it look like? So that they can avoid it
right.
and report it if they see it. And so this team focuses on doing all sorts of education and outreach, at speaking events, at booths. We do print campaigns, because, I mean, I'll be honest, when I started too, when you'd say, like, Medicare fraud, I mean, it sounds like a bad thing, but I
Mhm.
didn't exactly know, well, what would that be, or how would it impact an individual?
Right. What's that look like?
Right. So part of it is that helping people understand what is legitimate and what is not, so they can be feel empowered to confidently understand that.
Mhm.
Because I think part of what's frustrating to me is sometimes the tactics we see, well, it can be like the scammers, but also sometimes well-meaning people, we almost are trying to, like, scare older adults into, well, just, don't talk to anyone, close your door, never. I mean, granted, none of us should answer the phone if we don't really know who it is.
Right.
That helping, making people feel isolated, or more isolated than they already are.
Yeah, and more afraid.
Yeah, more afraid. That's not helpful at all. And
Right.
so and that's really a big, I think, ethos of, I think, most aging advocates, is respect for the dignity of the individual and their rights. And even someone who has some memory loss or some dementia, it's in their best interest, and really, I think, for us, in terms of respecting them, to not detract from or reduce their decision making ability more than we need to,
Right.
because that it just furthers decline, and it has all sorts of bad results for the person.
Right. Absolutely.
Mhm.
So we got 3 pillars. What's that 4th pillar?
We just have three so
Oh,
far.
yeah, 3
Yeah.
pillars. Okay.
Yeah, and but the wonderful thing, and something that I felt right away when I came to Pro Seniors, is having those like an interdisciplinary team doing different but related work under the same mission,
Mhm.
it really is effective because there's so much overlap and collaboration. And because we have different programs and different professionals with different but related expertise, we probably can serve clients more holistically,
Mhm.
learn from each other. And for example, the ombudsman program, again, they're advocating for folks, but sometimes they see an issue or a trend that they think that, and they will go consult with the legal team.
Mhm.
And part of the work of the legal team, yes, we represent individual clients, but we also look for what we call impact issues,
Mm.
perhaps an issue where we feel older adults are being improperly discriminated against, or there is the law isn't being interpreted correctly, or there's just something where we want to make a positive change of law, or maybe it's even push for some new legislation that would be beneficial for older adults or would kind of like, right the scales. So we can think about that, and again, across teams and specialties. And oftentimes there are clients who might need service from one or more teams. But then a lot of times too, like we were talking about with the aging network,
Mhm.
we also feel like it's our responsibility to look at, the whole person. And oftentimes they need perhaps assistance or resources that we don't provide, but we would want to needed assistance. But it can be a bit overwhelming to kind of decipher, like, where do I start? So
Mhm.
having a trusted organization that can help you with that in an unbiased way is important. And because we're a nonprofit and we're never going to charge anyone
Yeah,
for
that's so
service,
important because I think people might think any legal help they look for is gonna cost an arm and
right,
a leg, and so
right.
they don't even research it.
Well, you're exactly right. So our I mentioned before about our legal services. So our legal helpline, the only eligibility requirements for that is that someone's a resident of Ohio and they're at least 60 years of age.
Okay.
And that is a little bit unusual as a legal aid service because, again, there's such a vast need for legal assistance because it is often inaccessible to people because perhaps of where they live, like rural, but oftentimes financially there's a barrier.
Right.
So there's such a great need, and current funding for legal aid services and even like attorneys donating their time for pro bono
Mhm.
don't necessarily, or they don't they don't bridge that full gap. Um, so oftentimes legal aids have to make really difficult decisions about, where their priority areas are, and they can't accept all the cases. And
Mhm.
that's certainly true we have a small in-house team of attorneys that does um, individual representation on an extended basis. And so we have to make hard decisions there. But on the legal helpline, the way that model is, and there are other states with legal helplines, but the idea is to try to help, have this effective model for getting help to as many people as possible. And it's not extended representation, but it's what we call like a brief service. So it's a phone call with an attorney to for information, advice, guidance, and
Mhm.
then potentially referral. Um, but so to really get an understanding of what, I think of it as a lay of the land. If even uh, if you're not an attorney, and sometimes even if you are an attorney, but it's a different area of law, understanding like what is actually going on here, like where do I even start, what are my rights, what are my options, what are the pros and cons, cost
Mhm.
benefits, and like get a game plan for, based on all those circumstances, what I can do more moving forward. And there are so many situations where really just that bit of intervention of legal help can help that person then take the next steps to be empowered to move towards a resolution that doesn't involve their life being totally disrupted, which without
Right.
legal help might have been the case.
Right,
So
I can see that.
yeah, and so I think a lot of people are familiar now with like hearing the term um, uh, social determinant of health, or I think now people are referring it more to a social driver of health.
Hmm.
So all these factors that influence individual's overall well-being. So it can be, we traditionally have thought of like access to healthcare or other supportive factors such as, family members or, other resources, name the thing. But, evidence also demonstrates that access to legal help is a social driver of health. So, so commonly you'll see when you have projects put together in terms of community development, economic development, things to support people in achieving better overall well-being, a component of that will often be free legal help. Because without that being a piece of the puzzle, if you're experiencing trouble, whether it's maintaining housing, whether it's a potential foreclosure, whether it's a landlord-tenant issue, whether you're being harassed by a debt collector, there are often remedies and things that a lawyer can help you navigate the situation or give you advice on what your rights and options are so that you can get a much better I guess you could say result than unassisted.
Sure.
Yeah, and if you don't have the money to hire an attorney or get that advice, you're really disadvantaged.
Right. Absolutely. And you feel just lost.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
so we last year did about 12,000 appointments on our legal helpline. So
Mhm.
that and we're still part of our goal is to continue to increase capacity on that helpline because we know there are many more people who can use help that we're not currently able to serve just because of volume.
Right.
But that's still a lot of people that we've talked to. But year over year, the common, like about 25% of the calls on that helpline will relate to problems people are having in either applications for or recertifications or just receipt of benefits for like Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid.
Got it.
So think about it. For the most part, those are systems that we don't typically engage with
Right.
earlier in our life.
Right.
They're complicated systems. There's all these rules but for many older adults, like Social Security will be their only source of income.
Right.
So
It's very
if there becomes a problem with receipt of that income, it's pretty devastating pretty quickly. And so
right.
we have one of the questions or problems people will call with is they get a notice from Social Security that they have been overpaid in their benefit. Now, the recipient, the client that's calling us, did not know that. It's not through any fault of their own.
Mhm.
But so then Social Security is going to make back that overpayment by holding some of their benefits. Well, again, that can be devastating because if
Right.
that person has no other source of income, well, we have an attorney here, and well, most of the attorneys or all of our helpline attorneys are trained on this. There are some processes where, for example, there's a process where you can apply for a hardship waiver, and that can be considered to either, maybe minimize the amount that has to be repaid, or it depends on the circumstances. Because like in the grand scheme, someone becoming homeless is a bigger burden on society than potentially reducing someone's benefits. So that's a calculation that Social Security can go through
Mhm.
and evaluate. But again, understanding that that's available, how to submit that, how to advocate for yourself. That's just an example of, the challenges that people have. And, not everybody due to income has a great computer and printer at their home. Yes, you can go to
Or internet, great internet,
well, right, internet and perhaps, yes, libraries are fantastic.
Right.
But if you're very rural and don't have, I'd say too, and I grew up in a very small rural town in Michigan, and there was quite a bit of poverty. But I guess in my professional life, I guess what I'm saying, I feel like I have a fairly good appreciation for all sorts of different people, barriers, but even coming to Pro Seniors, and my background before was more traditional, seeing people in traditional practice of law, clients who had different types of challenges, but really realizing the barriers that so many people face and realizing that I mean, many of the older adults were helping. I mean, they've worked all their lives. They've, and just realizing that many of these barriers, some of it's just luck of the draw. Like, okay, who and where were you? Who were you born to? Where? And or sometimes people just had some really unfortunate circumstances in their life. It could be like a significant medical crisis that they had all this debt that now there's debt collectors coming after them. Or, I mean, or some people were trying to take care of a loved one that had an addiction issue and they have been financially exploited. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons. And so, not having judgment against anyone for, people arrive in different places for different reasons, but reserving judgment and like bringing everything we can, we talk about using the power of law to advance, hopefully raising everyone's well-being up to a way where they can contribute the way that they want to and live meaningfully. Because I think that's something we all strive to do.
Absolutely. Tell me, what is ageism? And
ageism?
Yeah, ageism.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that, because again, when I came to Pro Seniors, I'll admit I had a little bit of a thought about, this is going to be wonderful. We're all going to work to protect seniors. Well, that's a bit of a paternalistic view, or that's actually an ageist view, because really, and so I've had to rethink, it's about older adults, letting them have the autonomy to decide what their best interests are. Of course, if someone has like zero capacity or limited capacity, there are different factors that come into play, but really at baseline, just respecting the dignity and rights of an individual. But ageism is, as it turns out, the most prevalent and accepted form of discrimination globally. Yeah, the World Health Organization did a study several years ago that demonstrated that. And so, so it's very accepted, and this isn't just for older people, but younger people, to have biases against people or stereotypes, or even to act in ways that are discriminatory, like solely based on someone's age. So in the same way that we, I think, have come as a society to understand like how wrong that is to do based on like whether it's gender or skin color, to solely determine someone's value or what they can contribute or what they should or shouldn't be able to do based on age is not appropriate. And then where we, like in the kind of looking at equity, also see, I think when you think about equity and diversity and inclusion, age or even ability in terms of disability should be in the mix, but realizing that the evidence also shows, or that when someone has been experienced other forms of discrimination throughout their lives, so the gender-based, race-based, as they age, it then intersects with ageism. So it just exacerbates those factors. And so I think I've really kind of caught myself so many times, even we're just socialized to be very ageist against ourselves, but it's incorporated within institutions. You see it in law sometimes. And I mean, it's demonstrated to have a literal negative consequences on someone's lifespan. Like if they themselves internalize negative feelings about just aging. But when you see it acting or incorporated, whether it's in workplaces that don't feel like, investing in people over a certain age, or in laws that either leave out or disadvantage older adults. I mean, there are real consequences to this. And I think it's something that we're beginning to think of more. And I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, I think we're really seeing society just not honor our elders like we used to in years past, in generations past.
Yeah. And I think it's like it's like if we all have value as human beings, it's like it doesn't like just start disintegrating as we get older. And we all have different strengths and weaknesses and things we can bring to bear. And yes, I'm not saying it's not about pretending that that there are never challenges as you age, but there are challenges, throughout life. And again, for us not to really kind of to think about the stereotypes and how are they serving us?
Right.
And usually it's not in a great way.
It's just so true. And I can just think about in my life as an old nurse, nursing home experiences and just seeing those seniors just not being respected. And but then to have to educate some young caregivers on, look, they were our age once. They were young. They were vibrant. They did amazing things. These are amazing people.
Hmm.
We should never, ever treat them otherwise,
Yeah,
So
and even though, obviously as someone, somebody, 90 versus what they were 20, there are differences, but there are still things that
yes.
that person enjoys that they would want to talk about. And the fact that it, again, just having some awareness and grace, I think all of us about life, things do change. And that's part of what's good about life.
Yeah.
Um, but we're not very flexible in that thinking currently.
No, and the way our society moves away from our family home base, I think that has complicated things too.
Yeah.
So, then I don't think we're all there.
Yeah.
It's not the Waltons anymore, you
Yeah.
know? We don't
So
all live.
yeah, I do. So I just want to encourage anyone that's listening, if they have a legal or legalish question, our website is proseniors.org, and it has information on the number to call to make a helpline appointment, or that you could reach our ombudsman. We have a lot of just helpful resources on the website in terms of we have over 50 fact sheets on like the common legal issues that our helpline talks to people about. So there's a lot of great self-help information, but just other ways to reach out to us to connect.
Yeah, because I think so many of the topics you brought up gonna really stir up my listeners, to want to hear more about you. I did have one more question, about, we hear a lot about social drivers of health, and,
Oh, we talked
so
about that a little bit with just like with legal help being one of those social drivers of health. And so for us, like as we're talking about just helping make a difference in lifting up the rights of individuals who don't have access to healthcare, that's something we like to talk about a lot. And frankly, one of the models you see different legal aids using around the country and even in other parts of Ohio is what they call a medical legal partnership, where you will basically like embed someone with legal training in whether it's a hospital setting or a clinic setting. Um, and the idea is meet people, where they are. And sometimes you even see it in a school setting because perhaps
Mm,
there are, parents and children who need help establishing a IEP or individual education plan.
sure.
But there is a legal component to it. So you're seeing that with, in the medical legal field, like that collaboration. You see it probably most commonly around like children's hospitals and things like that. But there are some models in other states focused on older adults. Again, looking at, someone might be admitted to the hospital and have a health issue, but perhaps their Medicare hasn't been established properly or their Medicaid. Those don't always initially to someone sound like a legal issue, but that is something we could help with. So one of the things we aspire to achieve at some point is establishing like a older adult specific medical legal partnership, and we do some work with the VA currently, but so I think there's a lot we can do just looking at, again, connecting like the pivotal resources in a way that's more helpful to people when they're already facing a challenge so they don't have to go 5 different places, so
Exactly.
there are some really innovative models that have been in use that we'd like to see in use for older adults as well. And hopefully we can be part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, without further ado, if you could just remind us of the 3 pillars and, again, best ways to get a hold of you at Pro Seniors or get a hold of help at Pro Seniors, so important.
Yeah. So we have a legal program. That's our legal helpline and effectively a legal aid for older adults. We have our ombudsman program for the 5-county area in Southwest Ohio, advocates for individuals in long-term care. And then we have our statewide Ohio Senior Medicare Patrol program. And all this information is on our website at proseniors.org. We also have our 1-800 number, which is 800-488-6070. So we're available by phone or at our website.
Perfect. I will get all that in the show notes. Well, this has gone really, really fast, and I know I'm gonna have caregivers or care partners, other family members actually wanting to reach out to you and get more information. This is really amazing, and we're really blessed to have you in Ohio.
Oh, thank you. And if they reach out, I mean, as I mentioned, our senior Medicare patrol team, one of the things they love to do is come talk to groups. So if anyone's thinking like, could we arrange that? We'd certainly be happy to do that.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. Pretty amazing. Pro Seniors. I think you should check it out. Dimity Orlet, she's incredible. She's got loads of experience as an attorney, and she's perfect in this position to help steer people in Ohio to seek help when they need extra help as we age. You just have to be 60 to be able to partake. So I'm just excited you're here today. Excited to have another great resource to send out to you. I'm Teresa Youngstrom. This is Memory Care with Teresa Youngstrom. And just keep in mind, you got this.